Kunta,
Sulos, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Sulos, can we just test the shit document just to
The
check
what?
you?
Huh?
Are there? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. What document?
No, I'm just want to test it out, man, on the thing on
Oh,
this
okay. Let me
platform,
take
just the flag.
the
Yeah,
sheet. Oh, okay. There.
just want to test it out. Okay, it's working.
Okay, good. Then
Working. It's
Kunta,
working. Can you see
you
my
must
side?
not. Yeah, I can see. I can see.
Mhm. Okay.
So that
Oh,
AI notes, you can start using that.
the what notes?
The AI, man, then it takes notes of this thing or what is it? How does it work now? Of what people discuss.
You did it the last time. I saw your
Yes,
document the last
but
time.
I didn't know how to get it to the notes. I did that, when I upload the recording, then it gives me an option to transcribe it in
Yeah,
Word.
yeah,
And I did that, but I don't know. The words were all wrong. I don't know. Maybe the science part is not good, but somebody said the AI works better.
the AI.
So I'm gonna try it again if it gives me the option. But after that, I don't know how to what is it?
No,
When you have now, yeah, rework it into your own thing where you can use it actually.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Okay,
next step, I don't know. If it's gonna
okay,
ask me if I want to use it, I'm gonna say yes. But then how
okay.
to get it into my sentences?
Okay. Let me just check it
Yeah.
out here because this.
Because I want you to slowly start getting used to the content also, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because yeah, it
Mm.
means yeah, but it said start some summary as well.
Is it
Yeah, but
where is
yeah,
that? Where is that?
just
On the
look at the bottom beneath where they share
share
host
options.
tools
What is
and then AI companion.
more? Let me see by more. Oh, they had asked record. Now I was gonna record. Then it
Yeah,
asked for what else? Where's the AI?
the AI is next to the host tools. Just go to share. Look at share
Yeah.
on your right,
Share on share.
just next to share.
There is tools, house tools.
Yeah, then next to there's AI.
No, I don't have AI. Mine is just house tools. Record to computer. If I open that and next to it, it's more.
Yeah, then you
I
don't have
don't
the
have.
AI. You
The,
don't have it. You don't have it.
but sometimes it come up when we start, man. I saw it last
Yeah,
time. But see if you can utilize it. Oh, there's
yeah,
AI companion.
yeah.
Okay. I clicked on it now. Now, what does it do? Meeting summary. Who will receive summary after this meeting? Only meeting host, only host and co-host.
Yeah,
Only meeting host, co-host, and alternative host, no?
yeah.
So that is us. But I can't click on that. It doesn't give me that option. I just leave it at meeting summary, it's fine.
Okay.
Good morning, TG.
Morning, morning, Shanas. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, and you?
Fine, thanks.
Are you happy it's a virtual meeting or were you wanting to come to Cape Town?
No, I'm happy. February had a lot of traveling.
Uh,
So yeah, it's good to be grounded a bit.
yeah, yeah, you can focus more when you're there,
Mm, mm.
eh? Okay.
Good morning.
Morning, Chair.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning.
Welcome to the Portfolio Committee meeting. As greetings to the Minister and the department and the fellow members of the Portfolio Committee meeting. I'm going to switch off my video and then we'll proceed. Welcome everyone we're coming from a long week at the Sutherland and Carnarvon, where we enjoyed ourselves. We also we experienced the stars and all the beautiful work that is done by the department through NRF. We're now back, and today we are receiving a briefing from the department on National Intellectual Property Management Office. Am I still? Okay. I'm having a trouble with my gadget. I'm trying to change it, but I hope I'm audible. And then our agenda is as follows. We are going to Shanas, can you flight the agenda? Is the agenda flighted? Okay, thank you. It's a brief, it's questions, discussion, way forward, and adjournment. So now we have a mover for the adoption of the agenda. Honorable members.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Morning. It's Mchunu, Honorable Mchunu. I wish to adopt the agenda as it is, but also, Chair, to remind you that we have skipped the apologies. I don't know if there are any apologies before. So, but I move for the adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mchunu. Honorable Sabo.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members. Yes, Chair, I move to second the mover for the adoption of the agenda. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Sabo. I think we will just incorporate apologies and then proceed as such. Shanas, do you have any apologies?
Yes, Chair. We have not received any apologies from any members, so we should be full house today. The apology we received was from Deputy Minister. She's traveling to Cape Town this morning, so she will join as soon as she's able to on the side. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. The apology is well received. We are going to proceed now to a briefing. I will hand over to the Minister to lead the process. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. My connection here doesn't look great. So I'll do as we have done to close my video, except I don't have a beautiful picture like yours when I close my video. So if you allow me, and I hope that I'm audible.
You are audible.
You are audible and you are allowed, Minister.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me start by greeting you, Chair of the Portfolio Committee and honorable members of this Portfolio Committee. Let me also greet our acting DG, Ms. Guguzwane.
Recording in progress.
Who is joined by two other officials that she will introduce, and also the NIPMO executive. Chair, we really appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation to the committee. I wish to start by expressing our gratitude for the support we got during the presentation of the astrotourism strategy. Chair, when and honorable members, when democratic government took a decision to create a standalone Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, that was already way back in 1994. One of our primary objectives was to strengthen our country's innovation capabilities. During the same period, we also identify a strategic weakness in our innovation system or in our research and development value chain. A weakness that is commonly referred to as the innovation chasm. By innovation chasm, we mean barriers or hurdles commonly experienced in the process of innovation, like research that hardly ever translates to commercialization and intellectual property. Usually also experienced by those lower down the value chain and innovators who come from poor and working class communities. To address the issue of the innovation chasm, we put in place a number of innovation enabling legislative and institutional measures. I thought this is important for the background to what is going to be presented today. This included the creation of the Technology Innovation Agency, which is a funding agency for early startups in terms of IP's commercialization that comes from research products, as well as we passed what we call the Intellectual Property from Publicly Funded Research and Development Act. And both these initiatives were introduced in 2008. Through this act, we sought to ensure that intellectual property that is generated from research and development, funded by public money, is effectively identified, protected, utilized, and most importantly, that it is commercialized for the benefit of the South African public, especially our economy, health, and so on. This act also provides for the establishment of the National Intellectual Property Management Office, which will be presenting to you this morning. You know, Chair, I always, when I'm talking about this, think about insulin. Insulin was discovered at the University of Toronto in 1928. And the professor, we are told, who founded insulin was only paid $2. Of course, that was 1928, but even then, it wasn't a lot of money. I'm trying to think now. I don't know how many billions of rands have companies, pharmaceutical companies, made out of selling insulin from 1928 to deal with diabetes. The question does arise. That was funded publicly, but to what extent is even the University of Toronto still benefiting from that? So it's an issue that is also very important for us. Through the creation of NIPMO, one of the other weaknesses we sought to address is the problem of what we call intellectual property leakage within our system. Leakage refers to unauthorized disclosure or access to sensitive information like trade secrets, designs, research products, and technology belonging to an organization or individual, but it gets appropriated by others. IP leakage happens in a number of ways. These include data breaches, poor security practices, or the unethical actions of employees who work for a research company, say the research organizations like the CSIR, discover something through that process, then resigns from the CSIR, and then take that research product and commercialize it as if it was his or hers. So we do have challenges. I may as well just give other types of examples of intellectual property leakage. South Africa in 2010 produced what was ostensibly the first electric car in the world, called the Joule. But due to poor funding and weak IP management, this innovation was lost. I don't want to be making assumptions that are wild, but it's very interesting. I'm very curious about this. I wish one could do further research. Because when I asked, the researchers who were part of Jules, by the way, won international awards. And I asked at some stage when I became minister, where did these researchers go? Where are they? They say most of them went to the United States. Now, I'm wondering and thinking whether some of the electric vehicles produced in the US now, could it be linked maybe to some of those researchers? I don't know. But also the massive data breach that was experienced by the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, which we know it registers companies, where personal information of clients and employees were severely compromised. You will remember also, by the way, that some American company wanted to patent rooibos tea as his and as an American product, which is a South African product. We had to fight that battle. There is also the classical case of the Vodacom former employee who invented or came up with the idea of please call me. There's still a big fight going on now. So we are also faced in the continent that a lot of our IP gets stolen from developed countries, Europe and the United States, yet these are African products. For instance, Chair, South Africa is the fifth most, is in the top 5, let me put it that way, of the most biodiverse countries. I'm told that of the plant species that we have in South Africa, all sorts of them, we've only studied 5% of them. We haven't studied 95% of them. To research and study those, surely there will be new innovations, new discoveries in all that. And the continent is also very diverse. biodiverse. So it's no wonder that many big companies come and park in our continent, and some of them run away with our intellectual property. Now, together with TIA and this act, the IPR Act, NIPMO must also be understood as very closely connected to our department's Innovation Fund, which was mentioned by the President in his State of the Nation address last month, as part of the efforts to upscale support for small and medium enterprises. As honorable members are aware, this Innovation Fund was established in 2021, and its primary objective is to serve as a catalyst for the creation of sustained growth of the high-tech SME sector. It also focuses on de-risking any stage SME creation to generate sustainable pipeline opportunities of viable high-tech enterprises for later stage investments by the private sector. So you can see also this Innovation Fund, how important it is, just like TIA. And most importantly, compared to traditional financing institutions such as private equity investors and commercial banks, the DSTI's Innovation Fund provides less stringent but rigorously implemented financial support. You know, Chair, as a matter of fact, and this Parliament, through its Portfolio Committee on DTIC, has had hearings about, and in fact, there's been long-standing hearings, even during the 6th Parliament, on how the banking system in South Africa is not responsive to many of these things. We don't have a viable startup funding facility. Our commercial banks are not interested in that. They are not interested in supporting the SMEs. You will remember when during COVID, 200 billion rands was set aside to assist small business. There was hardly any assistance, even the small assistance that was given. It was to white SMEs, not to black-owned SMEs. So therefore, we see the work of NIPMO as key in our ability to unlock innovation in our country, commercialize it, and support it as part of contributing to economic and development growth in our country, especially also those from poor and working class background or initiatives. Now, Chair and honorable members, it's also becoming increasingly clear to us that the task of protecting intellectual property is quite enormous. And we are not even sure if an organization the size of NIPMO can be expected to cover the length and breadth of our country's national system of innovation. Do we perhaps need to repurpose NIPMO or enhance its capacity? Or do we need an additional complementary public entity that will play a similar role as the Competition Commission across our country's national system of innovation? These are issues that are under my consideration at the moment. And I also invite yourselves to reflect on that. Do you think after this presentation, is there something more that we need to do to strengthen NIPMO so that we protect our intellectual property? We also ask ourselves, when we talk about grassroots innovation, do we know what percentage of our economy constitutes the grassroots innovation economy, or what is its contribution to our GDP? This is work that still needs to be done. We need data in this regard. It is, of course, our expectation that the work of NIPMO should help our department to address the issue of transformation in the economy as it relates to, amongst others, the race, class, gender, and geographical profile of its beneficiaries. This is a very important matter. Therefore, in addition to the information that will be shared today, I have asked NIPMO to provide us with additional detail on the demographic profile of its beneficiaries. They may not necessarily be having that information now, but it's information that I need, and I'm sure also that you will need that information. These and related questions also suggest that the imperative of safeguarding our country's intellectual property is by extension also part of our social transformation agenda and the imperative of safeguarding of our sovereignty. I don't have to emphasize this more, Chair, the importance of securing South Africa's intellectual property and also national sovereignty in the light of the geopolitical maneuvers that we are seeing at the moment, and the United States government that is targeting us for things just that are completely out of order, for want of a better word. So NIPMO within that context then becomes even more important. With this background then, Chair, let me not take any more of your time and the time of the committee. I just thought this background is important just to contextualize what will be presented today. And I am then going to be handing over to the acting DG, Ms. Zwane, to then lead or introduce the presentation together with her team. Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning, Minister. Can I also please request that I switch off my video? There are issues on my side and I don't want to take a risk. So I would switch it off with your permission, Chair. We are here this morning to present all the work being done by the National Intellectual Property Management Office, which was established as a regulatory body in terms of implementation of the IPR Act. This was introduced in 2010 by the department. So we are going to be presenting a very comprehensive presentation around what we do within NIPMO. We have a number of responsibilities, which include financial management, regulatory oversight and compliance, and also making sure that we build capacity in the areas of technology transfer within that ecosystem. But most importantly, never forgetting that we need to create public awareness and advocacy as well. I would be handing over, Chairperson and honorable members, to the team that I'm with, namely Dr. Rakeshni Rapmotor-Preshel, who's the acting DDG for Technology Innovation, as well as Ms. Jetani Chesley, who's the head of NIPMO, to take us through the presentation. Thank you, Rakeshni.
Good morning, Acting DG, Minister, Honourable Chairperson, and Honourable members. We are very excited. Ministers shared the high-level structure of where NIPMO comes from. So without further ado, I think this has been a subject matter that's been at the interest for everybody. And allow me to introduce Jetani, Head of NIPMO, to lead us through the presentation. Jet.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, Minister, committee members, as well as DG and DDG. It is indeed a very big opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity to present NIPMO to the Parliament Portfolio Committee. I want to start with setting the background, and I think Minister did such a fantastic job to set the scene for us. Who is NIPMO? As you all know, innovation is a continuous journey of progress, lots of setbacks, refinement, and moving research and development to potential commercialization and impact. Government, academia, and private sector each play an essential, interconnected role in managing and funding various stages within this innovation chain. And as we have heard, NIPMO was established through the Intellectual Property Rights from Publicly Financed Research and Development Act, or IPR Act, to ensure that outputs from our publicly funded research and development is identified, protected, utilized, and commercialized for national benefit. At NIPMO, our vision is to have a South Africa where intellectual property from publicly funded R&D, supported through effective regulation and strategic collaboration, fuels our innovation, inclusive growth, and sustainable socioeconomic transformation. Our mission is to ensure that we have effective identification, protection, and utilization of intellectual property emanating from publicly funded R&D aligned with the provisions of the IPR Act, while also building capacity, raising awareness, enabling partnerships to unlock South Africa's innovation potential for economic and social development. The strategic purpose of the IPR Act is where we will start our journey. And Minister has so aptly spoken about the dual electric car, government-backed innovation that due to mismanagement or lack of effective management of IP had to close down, resulting in various job losses. We can also think about the Pebble Bed Modular Reactor. It is said that 9 billion rand was invested by 2010, but the IP was not effectively managed, yielding minimal national benefits. And that is, these examples are the reason why the IPR Act was established. It is to prevent these losses and ensure that the IP that we have is identified, that we know what we have, that we are managing it now accordingly, and so that we can use it for economic and social advancement. So what does the IPR Act regulate? I've highlighted only a few of the Act's provisions, but in essence, it applies to IP that was generated after 2 August 2010, because that is the date that the Act came into force. The Act shifted ownership to the recipients, typically our higher education institutions and science councils. But with this ownership, there is a mandate to protect where appropriate and commercialize for the benefit of the country. The state also has access if this intellectual property is just sitting on the shelf. A third thing that was introduced was a mandated benefit sharing. Intellectual property creators, as we've heard with this insulin researcher, now is legislatively entitled to 20% of the first 1 million rand that accrues to the institution and 30% of the net revenue thereafter. And according to the legislation, the remaining revenue must be applied to other R&D activities and to the operation of the Technology Transfer Office. This prescription is also mandated to be in the intellectual property policy of a university and science council, which is approved by NIPMO. And therefore, NIPMO ensures compliance. We approve certain IP transactions, and we maintain a confidential database for public benefit. The IPR Act wants to ensure that IP transactions prioritize BBBEE small entities for national benefit. And it also makes sure that the state gets a royalty-free license for emergencies within the country. NIPMO is tasked to approve offshore transactions and to ensure when we do this approval that we ensure that there is local benefit. The Act also provides that the state, when the IP is non-commercialized, acquire it and to ensure that it is utilized. We have a fund that supports IP protection costs so we can reduce barriers of protection. And we make sure that the recipients, now the owners of this intellectual property, report to NIPMO twice a year on these IP activities, how far they are in the innovation journey. And it is mandated that every university and every science council must have an Office of Technology Transfer or a designated person that manages the institution's intellectual property for the benefit of the country. So what was the strategic benefits now to government? Well, first and foremost, government can now concentrate on policy making while institutions are mandated to drive the utilization and commercialization of IP. With this mandated commercialization, we can ensure, or hopefully ensure, some return on our investments, potential job creation, and socioeconomic benefits. The state has a right to acquire any intellectual property to safeguard its public investment and to ensure that when intellectual property is not commercialized, that it is either repurposed or protected to minimize wasteful expenditure. We are now prioritizing IP transactions for our BBB, EE, and SMME partners so that we can support an inclusive economy, participation, as well as job creation. And by fostering structured IP governance, the IPR Act supports South Africa's ability to participate in a global knowledge network, knowledge economy, and to leverage our local and international technology transfer opportunities. Colleagues, the IPR therefore establishes a framework for the protection and management of publicly funded IP and is also aligning South Africa with other international best practices. NIPMO was established as part of the intellectual property, as part of the IPR Act, and when we determine our scope of work, we ask ourselves three questions. Was the IP generated after 2 August 2010? Was it created as a result of an R&D activity? Was public funding used? If the answer to those three questions are yes, then the provisions of the IPR Act apply and, in essence, NIPMO's scope of work. So if we look at the innovation value chain, it moves from idea generation through refinement and prototyping to pre-commercialization activities, and then technologies are validated, scaled up, and hopefully brought to market. Minister has mentioned that we have, through our policy development, established 2 entities or 2 bodies, NIPMO and TIA. And it's important to understand where we fit into each other and how we complement each other in this innovation value chain. Well, NIPMO oversees intellectual property, ensures that intellectual property from publicly funded research is protected, managed for the national benefit. We typically operate more in the concept phase or the pre-development, pre-commercialization phase, and NIPMO bridges the gap between academic outputs and technology transfer, commercialization, and through IP funding, compliance oversight, and capacity building for technology transfer. TIA, on the other hand, as we've heard, funds and supports technology development, scaling, market entry of these innovations. TIA operates similarly with us in the development and pre-commercialization phase, but also in the commercialization phase. And TIA bridges the gap between a prototype and market by providing financial support, bringing industry partners together, and providing commercialization expertise. If we look into more detail on our specific activities, in the concept phase, we will hear today about the IP Fund, Intellectual Property Fund. We also have an OTT support fund where we help with the establishment, operations, capacity development of these institutional OTTs. We ensure compliance and promote IP awareness by providing training on intellectual property and technology transfer. We also, in the development and pre-commercialization phase, fund staff members so that they can do the work. They can take that innovation further. We support certain technology transfer activities, and very importantly, we review specific IP transactions to ensure its alignment with the national interest. To a much lesser degree, in the commercialization phase, we ensure that intellectual property commercialization serves the public interest, especially when we review and have to improve royalty-free transactions as well as offshore IP transactions. In conclusion, it is important to understand where NIPMO's mandate is and what it is not. So we provide targeted funding to institutions, higher education institutions, science councils, via 2 funds, IP Fund and OTT Support Fund. We do not fund research projects, technology development, or any commercialization. We also do not directly fund any SMMEs, TVET colleges, or private entities, and these are the roles of TIA IDC, and other funding agencies. We do see our role as an enabler, and therefore we offer strategic guidance on how to protect and how to commercialize publicly funded IP, and where we are not able to do it, we direct our queries to our relevant entities. I'm extremely proud of our staff members in our office, where we have 3 patent attorneys, which means our directors have a technical degree as well as a law degree. So exceptionally skilled persons working already in this NIPMO office to provide strategic guidance. And therefore, we assist with IPR interpretation and compliance. But committee members, we are not an IP law firm. We do not draft contracts. We don't provide binding legal opinions. This is the mandate of the CIPC, Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, and the IP lawyers. We also try to avoid any direct commercialization or market entry support, as this is the domain of the DTIC and IDC. Capacity building, as you will see throughout our presentation, is extremely important to us. We support capacity building activities for our OTTs, and we collaborate very well with the CIPC, who is the lead authority on IP registration and education in the country. We host workshops, engagements, and raise IP awareness amongst our SMEs, TVET colleges, and other stakeholders. We do not register patents, trademarks, or designs. That is the role of the CIPC. And we do not support IP that is outside the scope of the IPR Act. In conclusion, we will respond to any query, inside and outside of the Act, and where it is outside of the Act, we will direct those stakeholders to the relevant person for them to get the comprehensive support that they need. We also try to not duplicate any funding roles. We work very closely with TIA. In fact, we have IP commercialization workshops this morning in Pretoria, that is co-hosted by NIPMO, TIA, as well as the Swiss Federal Institute for Intellectual Property. And so we try not to duplicate any funding roles by working closely together on various topics. NIPMO does its work as a regulator and an enabler through 3 directorates: the Advisory and Support Directorate, our Funds and Incentive Management Directorate, and then our Regulatory and Compliance Directorate. If we go to our first directorate, Advisory and Support, this directorate mainly have 4 activities that they focus on. This is OTT Support Fund contract management, sector networking and partnerships established and maintained, general IP advocacy and awareness activities, as well as specialized training in IP management and technology transfer. OTT Support Fund is, as I've mentioned, one of the 2 funding mechanisms that we have. From 2011, the DSTI NIPMO has concluded almost 150 of these support agreements to fund the establishment of the OTT, salaries, operational costs, capacity development, and certain technology transfer activities. These agreements were with 36 public research institutions. And through this fund, the DSTI NIPMO were able to fully or partially support 243 jobs, staff positions. And we're very happy to say that in our funding, we try to make sure that we as the department will give funding. The next time we want the universities to provide co-funding, and it is an expectation that when the funding is finished, that these people are absorbed permanently onto an organogram within the institutions. And that is happening. We are working to get those stats for Minister. And as you can see, from January 2025, the OTT personnel demographics, and this is now what NIPMO has funded as well as the permanent positions, we can see that almost 60% of OTT personnel in our universities and science councils are female, 41% male, and demographically, we have 64% Black, 17% white, 9% colored, and 9% Indian Asian OTT personnel working within these within these offices. If we look at our spatial footprint, we are happy to say that we support in all 9 provinces, all the universities and science councils that falls within the scope of the IPR Act. We have currently no active agreements in place for Council for Geoscience, National Health Laboratory Services that expires at the end of the month, Rhodes University, Stellenbosch University, University of Free State, and University of Limpopo. The OTT Support Fund is an annual call to do support in terms of a guideline, and with funding permitted, a call will be made open and priority will be given to those institutions that do not have active agreements in place. We will now move on to our advocacy and awareness. And annually, the NIPMO team co-hosts or present about 20 what we call IP-wise advocacy sessions. These are very often in collaboration with our higher education institutions, science councils, and whenever we get an invitation to come and present. On average, we do about 2 radio interviews a year. We were very fortunate. The Department of Science, Technology and Innovation had an education run just last week where we were able to talk about NIPMO and SMME support in all of the official languages of the country. So the NIPMO team was quite busy in doing those presentations and taking live questions. We also have a very big passion for TVET colleges, and therefore we try annually to support at least or host at least 4 TVET IP awareness colleges. We also work very closely with other partners, WIPO, CIPC, TIAS, CEDA, and others to celebrate World Intellectual Property Day. This year, it's every year in April, and this year it will be in the KZN area. We also work together with our department, as well as the Department of Basic Education, to have an IP for Teachers training, to incentivize and to teach people, to teach the teachers about the basics of intellectual property and hopefully how it can be incorporated into a curriculum maybe at a later stage. Colleagues, you would agree with me that nothing is possible without partnerships. We have, through the department, various partners that have been established through official MOUs, and others we just have a very good working relationship with. Internationally, we have an official MOU with WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, and we work with the Swiss Federal Institute of Intellectual Property. Government agencies, DTIC, as well as the CIPC, are our partners, which we co-host various of our interactions with. We work quite closely with the Department of Higher Education and Training. We also have a working relationship with the Center for Public Service Innovation, TIA and CEFTA. If we go to the other side of this honeycomb, we work with associations for technology transfer and research. These include TENSA, SERIMA, as well as the NSTF. Innovation Platforms, Innovation Bridge, which is an initiative of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, as well as the Department of Small Business Development, is a partner that we work through and work with to ensure that intellectual property is advertised where appropriate. Then I want to say that if we move to the block to the right, we see that the WIPO Technology and Innovation Center program was established in 2014 when was established in South Africa, joined in 2014. NIPMO became the national focal point for facilitating the establishment, coordination, and growth of TISC's host institutions across the country. These centers allow for researchers and the public to support them by providing access to databases, help with IP guidance, search strategies, training, and networking opportunities. In fact, our TISC workshop is going to be held next week in the Western Cape. And through this, NIPMO has successfully established and signed 27 MOUs with TISC host institutions. These include SMMEs, TVETs, higher education institutions, science councils, and in particular, the TVET College Gertebanda, as well as the Gautrain Management Agency, thereby strengthening South Africa's innovation ecosystem. We also have certificate or specialized training courses in IP management and technology transfer. It is mainly through four distinct interventions: the WIPO Summer School that is hosted December every year, NIPMO, the DSTI NIPMO is the lead, but we co-host it with various other partners. We also have access to WIPO distance learning courses. This is subsidized training. It's subsidized by WIPO, where people can have any IP-related courses, undertake them on their own time, and then get a certificate. We also, as I've mentioned, we are this morning busy with the NIPMO TIA Swiss SMME IP commercialization workshop, and we also have the TIS workshop next week. Over the past 8 years, we have made some impact in capacity building. We have seen that 2,433 trainees have entered into these courses. 58% of them were females. It represented not only South Africa, but 51 other countries, because some of them were online, which also included 25 African nations. Our statistics that you're seeing here is through 5 distinct training programs. One was the Innovation Policy Workshop that we're not doing anymore. And it was 41 training sessions that were organized and hosted by NIPMO. And these training interventions were organized in all 9 provinces. We will now move on to our Funds and Incentive Management Directorate. This directorate has 3 main interventions or activities that they focus on: IP fund management, OTT support fund, and incentive management. The IP fund was established under the IPR Act to provide for financial support for institutions, higher education institutions and science councils, for securing and maintaining their IP rights. This is an annual funding cycle where the department will pay a rebate of up to 50%, depending on the money, the funding that is available. We can therefore see that the total IP funds that has been claimed over the 13-year period was just shy of 600 million rand. This came from 30 institutions. And I just want to pause there, because it was, for me, nice to see that we have 30 out of our 36 institutions, 37 institutions, 30 that have an active IP portfolio which they could claim a rebate from the IP fund from. We also know that institutions like Sefako Mokgato University will be our first-time buyer this year because they have secured a patent. So out of that just shy of 600 million claims, we have a guideline that determines what we pay, what we don't pay. So post disqualifications, as well as when we're applying the rebate, the department has distributed 263 million rand to these institutions, with an average rebate payout of about 48%. I've showed on the right the proportion of total claims per institution. And when we did an analysis of the previously, disadvantaged institutions, we saw that they represent 27% of our higher education institutions. But their uptake of the IP fund remains very low, to about 6%. We say that it could be because of the majority of them are largely teaching universities, therefore have low research and development supervisory capacity. But it is something that Minister has tasked us to look at more and see how and what we should do to make sure that these uptake is better. When we move to our second fund that we have is the OTT Support Fund. I have mentioned a bit earlier about it. This was established also in 2011 under Section 9, and over the years it has evolved. Initially, we just initially we just provided support for the establishment of the OTTs, salaries. Then we realized that we need to provide more capacity development, training courses, technology transfer activities. In 2019, the funding scope actually expanded quite a bit. Technology transfer activities were included. To date, we have paid about 25 million rand. This includes feasibility studies, market assessments, IP audits, contract drafting, expert services, and to assist getting that prototype to be taken up and receive further funding. We also had a once-off IP Creator Award where we awarded funding to the top IP creators at every institution to advance their technologies. So over the years, 13 financial years, the total funding awarded, and I have to say awarded because we've already awarded for future years as well, is 367 million. And our future commitments over the next 3 years is about 42 tranche payments to the amount of 60 million. I've broken down where our funding allocation go. As you can see, the majority of our funding goes to salaries. And this is the demographics that I've showed you also, and those contracts that we were talking about. We also have capacity development of our OTTs, operational costs. These include the workshops that they will have for their researchers, technology transfer activities, and that IP Creator once-off award. But funding is not everything. We have to make sure that we incentivize this intellectual property journey that our researchers are going on. So we have been since 2019, the department with NIPMO has been a very proud sponsor of the SME, the Small and Medium Enterprises Innovation Award at the NSTF, which is seen as the Oscars of Science. Here are some of our previous winners. Last year, the Jonker Sales Plane, which was a spin-out company from that is associated with Northwest University, won. Very interestingly, anecdotally, they started out as two professors that turned their passion into a PhD and then in a company, into a company. They are employing now over 150 people. 90% of their staff are from the local township, and they were previously unskilled. However, now they are extremely skilled in manufacturing these planes to the standards of the European air authorities. So quite an inspiring story to hear from. But it's not just all about the money. We also remind ourselves that recognition is important. So therefore, the department issues around about 100 certificates annually, a certificate of recognition to our IP creators for their granted patents as well as their plant breeders' rights. And these are typically awarded at the gala dinners or award breakfasts of our universities and science councils. NIPMO is also part of the adjudication panel for the Department of Higher Education Training Innovation Output Subsidies. According to this guideline, the institutions receive a subsidy for granted patents and plant breeders' rights in jurisdictions that conduct substantive examination. NIPMO, the team, assists in identifying which of our intellectual properties will qualify for the subsidy. Pabalu, you see her here, and she's also with us today. Pabalu and her team will verify these eligible innovation outputs. They would sit on the adjudication committee. And from 2019 to 2022, 14 institutions have been awarded 295 units from the Department of Higher Education and Training for their innovation outputs. And more recently, NIPMO has become a sponsor of the Gauteng Accelerator Program, where local entrepreneurs and researchers are incentivized to think of technologies that has the potential for to improve efficiency of government services delivery and quality of lives. And I will now move on to from the very nice things that we saw to we always call them the bad cops. These three ladies that you see here are the enforcers of our legislation. The Regulatory and Compliance Directorate ensures that the regulatory framework and compliance is enforced and supported. They make sure that there's a regulatory oversight and compliance, and they safeguard our national interests. The IPR came into force in August 2010, and throughout the years, we have received various queries, which were logged and leads us to an amendment of the Act. The rationale, today I will just mention 6 of the proposed amendments. This is not cast in stone. That is being considered through a NIPMO, through a ministerial review that was established, as well as advisory board recommendations. The first amendment that is for discussion during public consultation is the organizational form of NIPMO. Currently, NIPMO functions as a specialized service delivery unit within the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. It has been said that this would limit, we have limiting autonomy, decision-making authority, and enforcement capabilities. And through a ministerial review, it was recommended that NIPMO be positioned with greater independence to fulfill its regulatory mandate. The proposed amendments is to establish NIPMO as a government component or public entity, which we do not prefer due to cost implications, to effectively regulate and support IP management commercialization. Colleagues, I also have to say off the back that the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation has been extremely supportive and has helped us a lot. So this recommendation has to be discussed. In terms of the scope of the IPR Act, currently the Act applies to all recipients of public funds. But we don't always know who all of them are. So it creates uncertainty and an inconsistent enforcement, which hinders effective and efficient compliance. The proposal that we are putting forward is to shift from all recipients to a defined list of institutions that cover 85% or more of the government R&D spent. Therefore, we will be able to create certainty, we can improve compliance, and ensure equitable access to the NIPMO support, the OTT support fund, as well as the IP fund, which is only for institutions. Therefore, the proposal is to expand this Schedule 1 list, which we refer to as our science councils, and create certainty and ease of enforcement. Which brings us to our third comment, strengthening compliance and safeguarding our national interests. Our compliance by our universities and science councils vary. And currently, we enforce it with the IP fund, where we say that if you don't report, you don't get the funding. If you don't, if you are non-compliant, we will not give you an OTT support fund, all in guidelines. But a strong compliance mechanism is needed to protect South Africa's interest. Through this, our proposal is to ensure that the Act provides in Regulation 17 that if you enter into an IP transaction that requires NIPMO approval and you do not get that approval, that transaction is null and void in terms of this legislation. We are going to move that into the Act. And we want to consider targeted sanctions. Maybe we are currently issuing non-compliance notifications, but it's just a letter. Should we consider penalties, restrict access to benefits even more? How do we ensure accountability and protecting of this national interest that we have? The fourth change that we will be presenting today is reporting and oversight. Currently, the reporting requirements should be proportional to the efficiency. The institutions report biannually to NIPMO, biannually to NIPMO. We also have funding agencies, but they have no obligation to report. And this links back to our recipients. How do we know who receives those funds? And without centralized oversight, assessing compliance and impact of publicly funded IP, this remains a challenge. So our proposal is to streamline the reporting to an annual submission for all our listed institutions, which we want to expand. We want to introduce a mandatory annual reporting obligation for funding agencies that funds the R&D, and how much they have allocated to which institution, so that we can ensure transparency, strengthen that oversight, and provide insights on IP management and commercialization. The fifth aspect that we will be discussing today is ownership and co-ownership. As you are aware, the IPR Act has shifted ownership from the funder to he who receives and undertakes the research, with the obligation to utilize and commercialize. But the IPR Act has got a very complex co-ownership provision that we believe is hindering collaboration because of that strict requirements. And our proposal is to simplify this co-ownership requirement to be something that is more manageable for our institutions, and which we will believe help with collaboration with other parties. The last aspect that we want to discuss today is the enhancing IP enforcement. So our institutions protect and hold rights in publicly funded IP. And we are using a lot of efforts to make people IP wise, to pay for this registered rights. But if you are not having the ability to enforce that right, it is like having a dog with no teeth. And so without enforcement, IP protection loses its impact, undermining the strategic value of this publicly funded innovation. The proposal is to explore viable enforcement support mechanisms, maybe through a dedicated fund or an alternative structures. We have, as NIPMO, engaged with insurers, maybe try to insure our universities' IP portfolios, but that was unsuccessful. And therefore, reinforcing the need now here to be creative and practical on how are we going to help our institutions when a body infringes and they can see that. How are we going to give them that teeth to go after them and claim back what is theirs? We are, in terms of our review process, NIPMO has submitted these proposals and others to our NIPMO advisory board that has given us review and input, and we will be presenting to our DSTI Exco for consideration and guidance to Minister, and then follow the normal set out prescribed amendments of the Act approach. In addition to the amendments of the Act, this directorate provides guidelines, practice notes, interpretation notes to assist with the interpretation of the Act. It helps with supporting compliance, helps with effective decision-making, and to strengthen this innovation governance. Currently, we have 8 guidelines for practice notes. It's step-by-step practice notes and interpretation notes on how to do the Act. As we have mentioned, recipients must submit biannually their IP activity to NIPMO. To date, we have received 3,200 disclosures from 91 institutions, and these disclosures enable an innovation or technology pipeline. On average, 234 new disclosures are reported. NIPMO tracks these disclosures from early stage research under evaluation to protection and then through licensing and commercialization. A 2023-2024 snapshot showed that 14% of our active disclosures on our database has been licensed and commercialized, while 46% of these active disclosures are under evaluation, building an innovation pipeline. But not all ideas are great, and some must be abandoned. So about 12% of our disclosures have been abandoned due to lack of market potential, researchers retiring, weak search results, lack of protection, of getting that protection. And if you want to abandon any disclosure, you have to get NIPMO approval. NIPMO, working with the Innovation Bridge Portal, has put out a practice note to say that should you want to abandon due to lack of market potential, it is mandatory for you to advertise this innovation on the Innovation Bridge Portal for at least 45 days to determine if there's any public interest. If none is received within after 45 days, you can then submit your disclosure to NIPMO requesting approval to abandon it. We also do various other regulatory functions. NIPMO approves institutional IP policies, full cost submissions, we track disclosure progression, and respond to stakeholder queries. Over the past 4 years, disclosures reported to NIPMO, we started tracking when are they licensed for the first time. And over the past 4 years, we saw that 51 disclosures were licensed for the first time, representing 11 institutions, of which 55 were traditional higher education institutions, 25% are universities of technology, and 20% science councils. Of that 11 is broken down in this number. IP policies provide a framework for our institutions and science councils to manage the intellectual property. It ensures that legal certainty that we want and alignment with the Act. These policies must be approved by NIPMO And every time it's updated, it comes back to us. Over the period, we have received about 28 IP policies that were received and reviewed. 21 were approved, while the rest are still under review and under discussions with the institutions. We don't only provide inputs to our institutions. Anyone is open. We have provided inputs to Sunby, who's not an institution in terms of the Act, but we've also helped universities across border, like the University of Botswana. When we go to miscellaneous queries, every email that requires an interpretation is logged by NIPMO. We receive on average about 54 queries. And the reason we log this is to identify recurring challenges that are faced by the stakeholders. If we get a query that's coming in more than twice or three times, we will issue a guideline, a practice note or interpretation note, so that we can ensure that the advice we provide to one institution is shared with everyone else. This has also been very helpful to identify potential amendments for the Act. And as I've mentioned, it contributes to the development of our information guidelines. Full cost is the actual expenses that was incurred for this R&D, direct and indirect cost. But colleagues, you would agree with me that costing each research project at a university is difficult and definitely not feasible. The IPR Act therefore enables the institutions to do calculations every 2 years to get an estimate for they call it a best estimate of what the indirect cost will be. And this is then called an indirect cost recovery rate that they will apply to their direct cost to determine the full cost of the R&D. If the full cost of the R&D is paid, it is deemed to be not publicly funded and the IPR Act will not apply. You can see the percentages of our funding over the reporting years, and I can say that 50 to 60% is, when we did our international benchmarking, more the aligned number for higher education institutions. So we believe that 34 and the 38% was for our institutions to understand how to actually cost and how much research actually costs our taxpayer. And that's why we saw that increase, as well as we are refining the way we are doing our calculations. As we've mentioned, nationally, we have to safeguard our interest, and NIPMO approval is required for certain IP transactions. This is when a disclosure or intellectual property wants to be licensed exclusively offshore, you need NIPMO approval. If you want to license on a royalty-free basis, in other words, there's no return, you need NIPMO approval. Or if you want to sell your intellectual property locally or abroad, you will need NIPMO approval. In addition, as part of safeguarding, NIPMO monitors non-commercialized IP to promote that utilization. Over the past 10 years, we have received 153 IP transactions that required, we have received 153 IP transactions over the past 10 years. 70% were approved, demonstrating the strategic alignment. And when we receive these transactions, the recipient must tell us why is it in the public interest to enter into this transaction. Why can't we consider others and define what the benefit would be? Because we do not want to be in a situation where we will approve, let's say, the offshore sale of intellectual property just for South Africa to license it back in. Doesn't make sense. And so you will see that 7% of these IP transactions that came to us were rejected because we do not believe it is in line with the IPR Act requirements or the objectives. We also have provided an other category, and this other category was important because it would show when institutions withdrawn, when an incorrect form was submitted, or when the IP was actually outside of the scope. Whenever we deal, I'm sure I don't have to say this to government officials, but whenever they hear that NIPMO approval is required, people, their shoulders almost shrunk. Luckily, our Act has a provision that NIPMO must respond within 30 days. Otherwise, that transaction is deemed to be approved. So what does this look like? Of the local assignments that were approved by NIPMO, who benefited? And we can see with this diagram that 74% of local assignments were transferred.
Sorry, Chair. Can you move towards summarizing and closing?
I will do so. Let me go, my apologies. Let me go on. This is our last directorate is just the head. In terms of the head, we do oversight, operational, financial. Here we have an advisory board as well as a dispute panel. We also have what we track, our national IP and TT surveys. We are underway with a third survey to track the outputs and benefits. We also have a knowledge management system where we are busy with new functionalities like non-compliance tracking of commercial activities, as well as benefit to society that is captured for each disclosure. In terms of the IP and TT survey, here are the results of the 2014 to 2018 survey, and we are building on these surveys for the third one is currently underway, which we hope to be published at the end of the year. Where does our licenses go? It goes to startup companies, when a license is entered into, and to SMMEs other than spin-out companies. And here is an analysis of higher education patent and design stats per province. We also see that our IP transactions get quite a revenue. You can see that on average, 50% yield 100,000 Rand, which is in line with international trends because you don't have a lot of blockbusters. But we see that our spin-out companies are employing, at 2018, they were employing 320 people, and that 72 startups were formed cumulatively, were operational, my apologies, by the end of 2018. When we look at finances for NIPMO, NIPMO has a budget of 45 million Rand in transfer budget. We break down our funding in OTT support fund, new and existing. As you've seen to date, we have funded so much and we have our future commitments. IP fund, we budget about 23 million Rand that we need to pay out. We hope that will be the 50%, otherwise we adjust our percentages. We do not have future commitments as this is a rebate. And then about 1.5 million Rand is budgeted for incentives, the awards, as well as the hosting of the summer school. Our future commitments in that regard is about 3 million for the next 3 years. In terms of HR, we have a small team with a big national responsibility. We have an organogram that is approved by the DSTI that allow for 18 positions. Currently, we have 12 filled. The NIPMO office has a 92% female representation, female and Black representation. On social media, we do have social media presence in LinkedIn, and we are, through the department, working on getting a NIPMO website. This is a summary of what we do. And as a conclusion, I just want to show the institutional success stories. These are universities that have spun out companies. Minister has mentioned that we want to see the demographics. And as we are underway with our third IP and TT survey, these are the questions that we are asking currently for this survey. 37 respondents. The collection period ended on 7 March, and we are looking at what these impact indicators, collecting these impact indicators, and hopefully be able to report on them. There's also products in the market coming from publicly funded R&D. Anything from insecticidal socks to prevent mosquito bites to sweet potatoes with higher nutritious value. Our universities and science councils have also made various international impact. We all know Leduma Nkosa, he's from Nelson Mandela University. And the University of Western Cape has provided uncapped Wi-Fi for a village in the Eastern Cape to digitally match them and showcase, give them accessibility to information. We also have various other smart spot from Wits University was replaced the WHO product. They use the smart spot from Wits University. We have Grapes as well as Central University of Technology collaborated with others to improve wheelchair designs for rugby wheelchairs specifically. Minister, thank you so much for the opportunity, and my apologies for taking too much time.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chairperson and honorable members. I have got nothing to add at this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. That constitutes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for that background that you gave us, and the presentation from NIPMO. And thank you, DG, for your team. Honorable members, do we have any questions or point of discussions? Can we take us for questions and discussions? Okay. I was about to say in the absence of hands, but I see that they are coming through. I'll start with Honorable Mazoni, and then followed by Honorable Mjatu, and then Honorable Tembakwayo, Honorable Ramungaro, and then Honorable Nkosi. And Honorable Nchuni. I want to be sure that I've noted everyone. Yeah, in that order, we'll start with Honorable Mazoni.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, if you would allow me, I'm also going to keep my camera off for the sake of bandwidth. Chairperson, I'd like to thank the Minister and NIMPO for a very comprehensive presentation. Chair, I think it's now well known that IP is a obsession of mine, specifically because of the fact that I dealt with large amounts of IP that went missing and were in fact stolen during the process of state capture and the years before and during before we managed to uncover exactly what was going on at the time. Chair, therefore, my question is quite simple. I've seen the mitigating and the interests, the national interest protections, etc. But what I don't see and what does concern me greatly is, does NIMPO have a risk assessment department? So, in other words, what happens when someone would, for example, comes through the whole R&D process and comes up with something, an invention or a piece of IP that is of such a nature that it's of international interest. And a large corporation, be it a large pharmaceutical company or a large armaments manufacturer, whatever the case may be, comes and challenges the IP as to whether it is completely new and whether it does constitute a new piece of intellectual property. And I ask this because what has happened in the past is these large corporations, which are oftentimes multinational corporations, have the money to go into an intellectual property war against South Africa for extended periods of time using international monies, and the South African corporation or the South African developer simply cannot keep up with the costs. And in our case, it would be NIMPO and the Department of Science and Technology, etc., just couldn't keep up with the costs, and we eventually have to abandon the intellectual property. So I think it goes in line with, do we risk having our intellectual property being abandoned because of sort of international players coming in and having more access to funds than we do, and therefore being able to challenge our intellectual property, when it's registered? Then, Chair, I'd also like to know, in terms of our intellectual property that will be protected, will it go on some form of record? So in other words, at any time, could the minister, for example, who has top-level security clearance, could the minister open a file and say, South Africa has the following pieces of intellectual property registered, everything's been complied with, and it's still there, everything's okay, and could we check and make sure that everything is still there? Because, for example, and I noted, and I'm very grateful for the fact that the pebble bed monitor was mentioned in the presentation, the nuclear pebble bed reactor. Now, the intellectual property for that, some of it can't be found, some of it went missing. I mean, let's not go into it because we could talk about it for days. But would NIMPO have a register that this particular portfolio could check up on, that they could check up on, and that the minister could check up on? So in other words, basically, almost an anti-corruption fail-proof, because we don't just legislate for the government we have now, we legislate for all governments that we've had in future. And then my very last question, Chair, is what is the possibility of recouping or finding or reacquiring the intellectual property that we've lost already that was state funded? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mazuri. In that order, Honourable members, I think it's Honourable Mjadu.
Honourable Chair, Minister, Acting DG, and the department, thank you very much. I just want to welcome the presentation, but I want to address serious concern regarding the recent report in NIPMO, operations and funding allocation. It lacks measurable impact of public funding processes, inconsistent compliance, and the neglect of SMMEs, particularly in province outside Gauteng. It highlights critical issues that require urgent attention and accountability. Absence of measurable impact. NIPMO was established to foster innovations and drive progress. Yet the report fails to provide clear specific evidence of what exactly was achieved, when and how the reported project unfolded. The absence of measurable outcome raises questions about the project success and effectiveness. Could you explain to this committee why there is insufficient, unconvincing evidence regarding the project impact? Furthermore, in light of this lack of evidence, we must acknowledge the absence of any measurable success in this initiative. When you go to UpQ funding processes, you claim to support various institutions financially, yet the funding distribution appear deeply flawed. Allocations are mere 3% to capacitate millions, while consuming 78% of funds for salaries to over just 8% of operation cost. It's highly questionable. How do you justify this disproportionate allocation, especially when you claim to be catering for millions of beneficiaries? This raises concern about the lack of transparency and fairness. Suggestion possible mismanagement and squandering of public funds. Could you clarify, Minister, the funding allocated processes and explain why it's structures this way? When you go to mixed compliance result, the reported inconsistent in compliance monitoring and are concerning, while concrete steps have been taken to address these issues and ensure that such lapses do not recur in the future. Furthermore, do you accept the full responsibility current state of non-compliance? It is essential to understand that this department need to focus what measures are in place to rectify this consent and ensure future accountability. When you go to neglect of SMMEs, you initiated appear to disproportionately favor larger institutions, particularly those based in Johannesburg, while likely to support the extended to province outside Gauteng. Why is this the case? What is the what is preventing you to expand this initiative to other provinces, or resources being mismanaged? How do you justify this neglect of small business and institutions? And what steps are you taking to uplift SMMEs across the country? And other question that I want to ask, can NIPMO provide evidence of how initiative has been strengthening local innovation ecosystem, particularly in underdeveloped areas? How many SMMEs and startup in these regions have been supported through NIPMO IP commercialization program? And what measures impact has on local economic development? Lastly, what percentage of publicity funded IP has been successful commercialized? And how does this compare to the global average? Can NIPMO provide data on the number of patents and IPs that have been abandoned due to lack of market potential or the factors? And what measures are in place to prevent such losses in the future? And lastly, how many HDIs have received support from NIPMO? And what specific programs are in place to ensure that these institutions benefit from publicity funded IP? Can NIPMO provide data on the number of IP disclosed patents and commercialized activities originating from HDIs compared to more established institutions? I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Tembakwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation done, including the introduction given by the Minister. The following are my questions. It's mentioned that the Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Forestry, and the Department of Agriculture is in a partnership, and our department is in partnership with the department in connection with the management of IP emanating from the publicly financed research and development. How do you steer the interaction amongst the mentioned stakeholders within the IPR landscape? How does the reprioritization of funds work in conjunction to the disbursed amounts compared to the actual needs of the institutions in relation to IP? The Minister mentioned examples of a lot of IPs stolen from us, with specific reference to Rooibos tea and Vodacom. Please call me as an example. What has the department done to ensure that South Africa is not further disadvantaged by its existing patenting system? The OTT support fund contract management. In the presentation, it was clearly indicated that the annual call for applications, say for an example, it said here, annual call for applications, due date 15 May, and in brackets, it's indicated subject to fund availability, even though the funding cycle is indicated as 1 to 3 years. My question is, say you put such a call for application with the specified due date as it is reflected here, and realize that there is no funding available, then what happens? Have you had such an experience? If yes, how did you go about to resolve the issue of disappointing those that might have applied. I would have asked about the difference, the big difference between salaries, 78%, and capacity development, 3%, but it has been asked, and I agree, I've got a problem with this. Why capacity development is receiving only 3% and salaries 78? You just pay salaries. All the money goes to the salaries, but just a small portion goes to, it should be vice versa. The salaries should be 3% and capacity development should actually be 78%, so that we keep this problems of mismanagement of funds. And I think the last one is in connection with the strategic update. I mean, the presenter is giving us the amendment of the IPR Act. What is our role in this? And why the amendments? What is the role?
Project, because it's only stated in the report that with little economic return to South Africa, but there was, very little details. So I would like to know what actually went wrong there, or what's the issue there. And the second question is, I don't know, because I've been getting kicked in and out of the Zoom meeting due to network. So I'm struggling to understand how this department works, when IPs are consent. Maybe I missed it. So maybe just for clarity, do you only work with institutions, or maybe if someone or an individual who does not belong to any institution but has a great idea and they want to protect their intellectual property, what should they do, or what do they need to do? Do they reach out to NIPMO and go through a certain process to test whether it qualifies? And lastly, Chair, I hear there's a lot of talk about mismanagement. I think my colleagues have also alluded to it. And I believe you've also stated that 9 billion was mismanaged. But I did not hear in the report you speak about how this was dealt with. Was there, consequence management implemented? How do you perhaps maybe plan to deal with issues of accountability moving forward? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable, it was Honorable Nkosi next, and then Honorable Kroon.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I welcome also the presentation and also the introduction by Honorable Minister. My questions are going to be few. I think I only have 4 questions, Chair. The first questions will be, Chairperson, I just want to check, where are these offices of technology transfers which were established? In which provinces do we have those offices? Which towns? Where will the public be able maybe to access them? Number 2, Chair, are they able to also assist the IP arising from the private funded research? Like, for instance, Honorable Minister mentioned that there was someone who was working for Vodacom who came up with the please call. Are we able maybe to assist such a person with private funded research? Or we are only strictly supporting the IP arising from the public funded research? I just wanted to check that as well, Chairperson. Number 3, how much funds has been dispersed by the IP fund to date, and which institutions have received the largest share of the funds? Number 4, Chair, there are 4 institutions accounted for around 70% of the 55 startup companies that were formed. I just wanted to know, who are these institutions, Chairperson? Those are the only few questions I have. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Chun.
Thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to yourself, the Minister, the Acting DG, the honorable members, and the support staff that is with us. Thank you for the presentation, and appreciating the information provided. I think that the first thing that I think we need to get further on it, what the minister alluded on, of the intellectual property leakage, the data breach, and the demographic profile of the beneficiaries. I think those three issues for me, they really need a thorough discussion from the portfolio committee. If we can have something special, a special committee meeting, Chair, where we will really look at those things and look at the amendments that are presented here, if they are really talking to the real measures that we would like to see when it comes to the intellectual property leakage. Around the demographics, yes, I've seen because the demographics of the profile of the beneficiaries on the innovation fund and the different fundings that are there. I think we need to get to a point where we are saying, yes, yeah, it has gone this far, and these are the areas that have been covered, and the profile of those beneficiaries, I would like to have seen it there. But also, Chair, in the presentation, it was mentioned that they are working with the institutions in terms of funding the institutions, but there was a mention of the previously disadvantaged universities benefiting a lower percent. Do we have a plan to rectify that? Can we be presented with that plan so that we know how that is going to be dealt with? I'm saying this because if you are talking about those universities or those institutions, you are talking about the universities that are closer to the communities that might be having such information. I mean, that need this service more than we can think. The second one, Honorable Chairperson, is the issue of, in the presentation, the abandoned IPs. They saying the reasons due to lack of market potential, weak, or but whilst on that, in the presentation, it is mentioned that before this IP is abandoned, there must be an advertisement for about 45 days, if I listened carefully. My question is, this advertisement that is being done. One, which platforms are used? Are they user friendly? Those platforms which are used for that advertisement. Secondly, is in terms of risk assessment, is there no manipulation opened in a way that will deprive somebody who was having a good project that can be sustainable, which might then and that abandonment how do we have a way of checking if it does not come back after being abandoned by a particular person, and then it come back with another company or individual who have had an access to this information, and now utilizing the very same information for their advantage and depriving the originator of that material or information. And then another one is it's on the awareness or the advocacy on this on NIPMO and the activities. How far do we go with them? Making people aware about this, or the advocacy campaigns that are going to expose a lot of people to this information, so that it does not become an information for the privileged, and others will remain without that information. This goes back to Honorable Minister, through you, Chair, that first, the question that I once asked when we talk about, when I first attended this meeting of when I first attended the meeting of the portfolio committee, that of protecting the indigenous knowledge, or yes, as the department. If we don't do the awareness campaigns, if we don't do the advocacy campaigns, we might be closing an opportunity for those that have a potential to benefit out of this, and the funding being known to only, those that are advantaged at the present moment, leaving behind, in particular, our rural communities, because they have this knowledge, they have the indigenous knowledge, which needs to be protected. And the last one on that one is, how do we go about engaging those indigenous knowledge and those that possess that indigenous information individually without the institutions? Or is it only open? Can they only be assisted through the institutions instead of also going to them individually as we go on with getting closer to the communities? My last one is just to check how far the minister goes with working with bringing in all the other ministers on board, so that they can look at the common areas where they need to work together. I heard the minister talking about different departments that they work, but I'm just checking on other departments. I've noted forestry, fisheries, land reform, and all those, but just also the arts and culture department, that working relation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mchono. I think that will be all from the questions from the portfolio committee. Over to you, Minister, DG, and your team.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to honorable members. Can I suggest maybe that the DG and the team, they start, and then I can see what is it that I can then pick up at the end. There are one or two questions directed at me, And then I may also add, if need be, on what they will actually say, but if they can take as much of the question as possible. Thank you very much, Chair. With your permission, hand over to the DG.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, for the questions. May I request that Acting DG start with Jitani? Then there are those that I would cover from a departmental perspective and working with other departments, and then hand back to the Minister. Thank you, Rakeshni.
Thank you very much, DG, Minister and honorable members. These are very valid questions and comments that have been put on the table. Perhaps we've actually not shared the details in terms of how the 78% directed to staff is actually to support eligible institutions, and the OTT officers are actually across the 26 universities as well as science councils. So we can prepare a detailed response to a number of the queries that have been put to the table for us to respond to, but let me also allow Jitani to provide inputs. Jet? Jitani, we cannot hear you. There's some interference from your side.
Maybe let's try and call her. We can't hear her at all. Sorry about that, honorable members.
Maybe she needs to disconnect and reconnect again. I don't know. Chair, through you, maybe the acting DG can come in and answer those questions relating to the department whilst we are waiting for Jitani to properly connect.
Okay, thank you, Minister. A lot of the questions would be responded to by the IP office because of the nature of the question. But in terms of, Jitani?
DG, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Can I go ahead?
Okay, no, it's fine. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, DG. And thank you so much, everyone, for the fantastic questions. I want to answer some of these questions fairly briefly, starting with Honorable Mazzoni's questions, risk assessment. Honorable Mazzoni, we are part of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. We do report some of these risks on the risk register of the department, which is managed. But Honorable Mazzoni, you would recall that in one of the presentations, we spoke about enforcement. And the example that you used when a big institution come and take our IP, how do we enforce it? We have identified that as an issue. We do not have sufficient measures in place to enforce our IP rights through our universities and science councils. We have tried to get a mechanism for insurance, that didn't work, and we're still investigating which measures or mechanisms to consider for effective enforcement. With regards to the database, yes, we do have a database. Universities and science councils report biannually to NIPMO. We have this confidential database. It is, should you want to see what is publicly funded, luckily, every intellectual property right become open for public inspection 18 months after it has been applied for. Therefore, a public search on the CIPC website can show what is publicly funded, and with the security clearance of this committee, we can provide information that is required that is secret. So that is not a problem. We can show that to the committee if there's specific questions. With regards to lost IP and that was state funded, what do we want to do? I also believe that was Honourable Toomey also asked about the accountability for the PBMR and the photovoltaic. As NIPMO, we have not done any work in this because we do not have jurisdiction. The IPR Act came into force with no retrospective applicability. The reason for those inclusions in my slides were to show that because of these mismanagement, if we can call it, this legislation came into place to rectify what we have done wrong in the past, to rectify, to establish better IP management practices so that we do not have those again. At this stage, there is no way to go back and see what has happened in the 1990s and how we can recoup from that. With regards to Honourable Tembinkosi and the questions, there were quite a few. I'm going to touch on some. The measurable impact, Honourable Member, we have two projects basically. IP Fund that funds patents, designs, trademarks. So the beneficiary in that is an application number, and the OTT Support Fund. I would like to understand maybe how we can help and get more measurable impact. So we will definitely work on that and try to have a better representation. With regards to the OTT Support Fund, salaries versus capacity development, when this IPR Act was established, the universities and science councils said, I have a legislative mandate to comply with this act, but I don't have money. So how am I supposed to do this if I don't have money to appoint people? So initially, the first 3 or 4 years of the OTT Support Fund was purely just to get warm bodies to establish these technology transfer offices. Later on, as the fund evolved, we started moving away from salaries to now technology transfer activities, capacity development, operational costs. And so it is definitely noted the salaries versus capacity development. And when we talk about capacity development here, it is the capacity development of the OTT personnel. It is not capacity to outside people. Honourable Tembinkosi, also, it was mentioned that we have to serve millions. And I think for NIPMO, our main stakeholders are the 37 institutions, 26 higher education institutions and 11 Schedule 1 institutions or science councils. And so we dedicate our funding to these 36 recipients to set up these offices of technology transfer. There was a question on how many of the disclosures were successfully licensed and commercialized. The answer is 14% for the 2023-2024 snapshot. With regards to the IP that has been abandoned, if we are able to provide you with the details and the numbers of those, yes, we can. We have a database that we can provide every IP that has been abandoned, that NIPMO is approved to be abandoned as well. We have that statistics and we can provide it to you. With regards to the previously disadvantaged institutions, NIPMO has supported all of them. As you have seen, there are multiple contracts, 150 contracts that has been entered into with 36 universities and science councils. So every university, especially the previously disadvantaged university, has had at least once, some maybe 2, 3, or 4 funding agreements for OTT Support Fund. If we then go on to the questions by Honourable Tembinkosi, we were talking about the reprioritization and working together. My apologies, Honourable Member, I didn't 100% get that question, but I will get back to you or maybe ask my colleagues to respond. And then when we have an existing patent, the question was, if you're an SMME and you've got an existing patent, what support is being provided? As we have mentioned, this NIPMO is solely focused on publicly funded IP. Luckily, we do have various other interventions in the department to look after, to provide help for SMMEs with private funded interventions. So if you are an SMME, NIPMO works with others for an inventor assistance program that is run by the DTIC, where lawyers provide pro bono work for our SMMEs to help with their IP registration. The CIPC has also various interventions in place to help SMMEs protect their IP. Honorable Nkosi, where are these OTTs situated? Every university, 26 universities, and every science council have an OTT. I believe the University of Fort Hare has a representative, an OTT delegated to each of their campuses as well. So should you want a list, we can provide you with a list, but in essence, an OTT is across all the provinces situated with universities and science councils. IP arising from privately funded, where must they go? We will typically try to assist with a query and then send that person to the Inventor Assistance Program, to the CIPC, or to other funding organizations such as our Technology Innovation Agency to see whether they can help this privately funded individual. With regards to the IP fund, the question was IP fund, who has received the how much has been paid out? That is in one of our slides. I believe it's 263 million rand has been paid out over 13 years. And the institution that received the most was the CSIR. We have also received a question from Honorable Tembeka on the previously disadvantaged universities that don't engage with the IP fund or has little engagement. Honorable Member, I agree with you. We have to put a plan in place. The IP fund is for when you have intellectual property that you protected and now want to have a rebate on. Our previously disadvantaged universities doesn't have a big innovation pipeline. The assumption is that some of them are mainly teaching universities, that not a lot of postgraduate research is taking place that will result in these disclosures. But I concur with you that how would we work to see them getting on par and using the IP fund to its fullest? The startups, Honorable Vusi mentioned the startups for 2018 represented 70% were represented by 4 institutions. Honorable Member, I do not have that statistics available at my fingertips. It is in a database under one of our managers at the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. I can get that for you. But I can also say, Honorable Member Nkosi, that demographic from 2018 has changed a lot. As you've seen in some of my slides, we saw that 11 institutions have now participated in licensing of their technologies, of which I believe 25% were universities of technology. So that 4 that we reported in 2018 has now definitely been more 11 to 15 of the 37 universities. Then my last with regards to the demographics of the startup companies that has been established by universities. We are currently underway with a 3rd IP&TT survey that will be published. Although it doesn't ask for the demographics there, it asks just number of employees. We are aware that the EXCO, our DSTI EXCO, has approved that we can run a follow-up, what we will call an impact survey, to delve into the details of what do these startup companies look like, what are their turnover, and so hopefully after we have done this survey, which is quite a mammoth task, we will then implement the impact survey that our EXCO has approved. The beneficiaries of the IP fund, as I've mentioned, is patent applications, design applications, IP abandonment. Honourable Member Tembeka, if it's abandoned and advertised, it is advertised on the Innovation Bridge portal. It is a public website. I know that the Innovation Bridge portal, which is an initiative of the department, is not NIPMO, but another program, or a chief directorate, they are working on getting it 0 rated so that you do not even have to pay any data to see what is advertised there. It's a fantastic platform to connect people. If it is abandoned, so if it has been advertised for 45 days, you still need to come to NIPMO to show that you have done everything in your power to get a license, to commercialize it, to make it work. before NIPMO will approve. If it is then in the public domain and someone else takes that and utilizes that information to their benefit, how would the other people get access? Unfortunately, as soon as it's put in the public domain, it is there. And so that is why it's so important for us in this abandonment process to make sure that every measure is taken before we abandon this publicly funded research. And but colleagues, we also have to remember that failure is part of life. So that 12% is, for me, quite low. If you think about how many research outputs will not make it, will not be able to be commercialized or utilized. And so we should not see that abandonment as a bad thing, but something that our technology transfer personnel are working to make sure that everything is done before they are abandoned. Advocacy and awareness, specifically with regards to IKS. Honourable Member, we are working with another unit of Chief Directorate within the department and our National Indigenous Knowledge Systems Office, or NICSO. When we get invited to the IKS IP training sessions, we do that, our IPY sessions there. We are also working with the CIPC to have an SME IP booklet on how to do IP registrations. It is also going to be translated. The CIPC is doing this, translated into 2 other languages to help with intellectual property awareness and accessibility. And then how do we engage with the IKS members? This is not, NIPMO does not do that, but luckily our NICSO office, as well as Ank from our department, have certain procedures, how they deal, how they engage with the tribes, to make sure that we have a national recordal system at the department, to make sure that our indigenous knowledge are actually captured, recorded, and then not misused for other gains. And for me, I hope that I've attended to the majority of the questions. Thank you so much, DDG, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Tani. I just wanted to add on the IPR Act, where Honorable Tambekwayo was asking what role could the portfolio committee play. There was a slide that was showing the proposed amendments, which are still at discussion internally at council level, that would then be elevated to the minister, where he also makes his input. But I think what sums it up is what Honorable Mkulo said, that perhaps they would need to be presented with the amendments or the proposed amendments once that process is finalized, just to make sure that everybody is accommodated. As I think what has come out several times around this is the importance of making sure that we include your rural communities and your IKS individuals that could have knowledge in terms of IKS. So it's something that we're gonna work on, and that would be quite useful to engage the committee once we're ready, finalize the inputs in terms of amendments. Also, I just wanted to speak around the funds. You would observe that the stats that we're presenting is the life of NIPMO and the funds over 13 years in terms of what has been available. I think what Minister also indicated was that as much as we have this Chief Directorate, which is an entity within the DSTI, we would want to see it growing. And from the funds that we've had over time, though they've tried to do a lot, it's something that would need to grow. And probably with the revision of the Act as well, this is something that can be considered, so that NIPMO is given more muscle, maybe still within the department, or eventually being an independent entity where it's able to have more impact within the country in terms of IP. We do recognize the request that we may need to be more specific. There is a slide that speaks to the tech transfer offices, where they are located, but I did that Honorable Kosi probably would like to have details that are more specific. We would be be able to respond to most of the questions here, but we might have to just check if there's something that we've left out to be able to submit. And also in terms of working with other departments, probably this is what the minister would speak to, I'm not sure, but there is an interministerial committee on science, technology, and innovation, where we try to work with other government departments around STI intensive work, and it would obviously include IP management. Thank you very much, Chair, and back to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope my video won't my connectivity won't misbehave. Thank you very much to you, Chair, and all the members for the questions, comments, and engagements. I think that Chair Ten has answered a lot of, excuse me, by the way, I've got a very bad flu, Chair and members. Let me start with the issue of legislation. Legislation, there's a process which does involve the portfolio committee. The steps for legislation is that it will come from my department, and then I take it to cabinet, the draft bill. I take it to cabinet for cabinet to comment, amend, and all that. If need be, we sometimes publish the bill for public comment and bring it back to cabinet. But ordinarily, we don't do that because Parliament also goes through a public engagement process. So the steps would be, I go to cabinet, cabinet approves the draft bill, and then it gets tabled before Parliament. Then the portfolio committee would process it. It's the portfolio committee that leads the processing of the bills that are within its own sphere, you know, the DSTI. So when that stage comes, you will engage with the amendments. What Chetane was doing here as part of this presentation was that there are certain legal loopholes that we have identified, and she was sharing those that will need to be addressed through legislation. Otherwise, the process will be as I outlined it. You know, the portfolio committee will drive the bill when it reaches Parliament. So that is the one thing I thought that I needed to clarify. The second thing, I agree with you, Honorable Matsoni. In fact, the points you are making have made me to think that it might as well be helpful. I don't know, Acting DG, whether we can find any of our entities to help us with this, that it may be helpful to go through the report on state capture and try and identify real or potential instances of theft of IP. It may actually be a very interesting. That, of course, would be public. I know for a fact that one of the reasons why we are chasing the Guptas is that they actually possibly stole a lot of IP from Daniel. As well as a lot of IP was possibly stolen from Transnet, from Eskom, and so on. Maybe we need a bit of an audit on our side, because those are public institutions, to say, are there implications for the theft of IP? That's what I've been thinking now. I don't know, Acting DG, we may want to assign, whether it's the HSRC or other entity, to just do an audit of the report of the State Capture Commission to actually look into that. But I also want to answer Honorable Mjatu, also to say that where we find wrongdoing, we will have to involve law enforcement agencies, ultimately. Of course, it's always good. That's the capacity we are trying to build with NIPMO, that we prevent the theft of our IP. We facilitate the establishment of IP from our research and so on. But we do have the option of following things through law enforcement agencies. Like, as I have already said, state capture stole clearly lots of IP. That's why this matter government has committed that we're going to take legal action and prosecutorial action on all the cases of state capture. We must leave no stone unturned on that, including for us, of course, we are more interested also on the IP. Honorable Mjadu, you sounded like to me you were reading the questions that you were asking. We would appreciate if you could give us those questions so that we can look at them afterwards and see if we can then, as Cheteni was indicating, give you some detailed response to them with your permission, Chair, and the committee. But also, I think we must be cautious in posing questions as committee members, that we don't assume that there's mischief on the side of NIPMO or whoever when there isn't. But I think the best way to deal with your questions is that I've noted some, but I thought it sounded like to me you were reading them, well written down. Let's have them, and we'll come back as soon as possible and respond to you, and minimize and avoid making wild allegations unless there is something. If there's something you have picked up or you are picking up on the side of NIPMO or whatever, we would like that gets brought to our attention. Now, I think maybe to go back to Honorable Mazzoni, if I had heard correctly. Well, the issue of the record of IPs, publicly funded IPs, is also an excellent idea. Maybe we need a data bank, like this UN organization, is it NIPMO or something like that, which has got a bank of all IPs in the world in Geneva. And you can go there and pick up an IP if you feel that you can translate it into a commercial activity for free. It's a very interesting thing. Maybe we do need to create a data bank, but we can only create a data bank of publicly funded institutions. I can't remember who was saying, yes, Honorable Nkosi was saying, do we help with privately funded research? Definitely not. Because our task is on publicly funded research, and largely from our system. Maybe the point you are raising is a broader point that as a country we need to look at. There are other institutions, as we have said, the CIPC, which also has got intellectual property of companies and so on. They are the institution that keeps all such intellectual property for the country as a whole. And we did indicate that we do interact with them because they are an important role player. Maybe we need a broader strategy for the country. We need to look at CIPC, look at NIPMO, look at a whole range of other possibilities. Maybe this audit of the State Capture Commission I'm talking about can give us some insights in terms of what is it also that could be done to deal with the theft of IP generally in the country. I also, Honorable Mjadu, we work with SMEs largely. I mean, NIPMO is largely about SMEs. So I don't understand the argument that we neglect SMEs. when in fact the whole presentation is about how we support startups, we support SMEs, and so on. The innovation fund that the president was talking about, it's focused on SMEs. It has been focusing on SMEs. I think that there we can't be accused of neglecting the SMEs. If you feel that maybe we need to do much more, that's a different question. But we can't be accused of neglecting SMEs because a lot of our funding is supporting small and medium enterprises. As a matter of fact, we work closely with Minister Dabeni on this matter. The Innovation Fund, the Technology Innovation Agency as well, funds lots of SMEs. Doesn't fund big companies and so on, because we are more or less focused largely on startups, companies that arise out of research products that have been patented into APs. Honorable Tembe, what I want to pick up is that I take your point, and I think in a way I've dealt with that. How do we ensure we do not lose intellectual property? That's what NIPMO is set up to do. And of course, we will have to look, as I pose the question myself, is it enough? Does NIPMO have enough capacity? Already some, yourself and others, are beginning to indicate that maybe NIPMO doesn't have enough capacity to be able to deal with this. NIPMO is a small organization, by the way. It's very tiny. And a good amount of its work is labor intensive. It requires human beings who are going to go around and check things. Of course, we have to look at this 78% employment. It might be because a large part of the work actually requires human beings to be able to do this. But we take your point and your reservations. It's something that we will go back and look into. Honorable Mkhulu, maybe if I can just pick up on one or two things that we've raised. The issue of the demographic profile, once this exercise being done by NIPMO is complete, we will inform the portfolio committee and come back to the portfolio committee, not only to inform you about those results, but also hopefully we would have looked at that report and come up with concrete proposals, so that when we come back to the portfolio committee, we don't just share the outcome of the results, but we also share what is it that we think needs to be done. The issue of HDIs is very important. I agree entirely with you, the historically disadvantaged institutions. But I have a bigger plan on HDIs, how to strengthen research and development in HDIs. Acting DG, at some stage, we may have to come back to look into, to present on what we are planning to do. We were thinking that we could actually be forming or looking into something similar to what was established by the DHET whilst I was there, which is the Sibusiso Bhemu Development Program that is focusing on strengthening and capacitating historically disadvantaged institutions. We might want to be looking at something of that nature for research and development to strengthen R&D in the HDIs. That's work in progress. Acting DG, as you know, I expect this to be in the strategic plan as well as in the APP to say, we set up this program of assisting HDIs so that we are able to move with speed. On indigenous knowledge systems, we remember that, where was this matter raised? I can't remember whether it was at the last portfolio committee, yes, where you raised it, Honorable. Firstly, we'd be more than happy to come back to the committee and present on our IKS, Indigenous Knowledge System portfolio. What we are doing, what is it about, and so on. And then we answer your question in relation to that. as to IP in relation to indigenous knowledge. It's a very important matter that we are raising. As I said, one of the things that we do, we work with our herbalists because we want to study closely some of the mutis you see that they are using and see what qualities do they have. We're closely with the Chinese because Chinese are very good in traditional Chinese medicine, some of which is in the market now. It does all sorts of things. So it's a very important matter that we are raising. But as I say, we can come back and report. I think the active DG, this is the last point now that I'm making, has already picked up that the president during the 6th administration had established an interministerial committee on science, technology, and innovation, made up of ministers who come from what we regard as technology or science-intensive departments, like environment, for instance, as a matter of health, definitely with health innovation and so on. We are going back to Cabinet to report on the work of this interministerial committee with the view that it actually needs to be resuscitated during the 7th administration, because that's one concrete way through which we are able then to coordinate with other ministers. But also I do quite a number of bilaterals, Honorable, with my colleagues, the ministers. I've just met with the Minister of Basic Education. We had a very fruitful discussion on collaboration between our two departments, especially in the area of strengthening the teaching of maths and science in schools. We also are doing things on that score. I'm planning this week to be meeting with the Minister of Higher Education and Training to also look at common issues. We've got lots in common with the Department of Education and Training. Also, we have a plan that I will soon be meeting with the Minister of Defense, because also there is a lot of technology work that is being done by defense and its entities. Remember also I mentioned DENEA, which is one entity. There's also AMP, which also does a lot of scientific research and work and so on. So I also do engage in bilaterals with ministers where there is overlap or there are common areas of interest. With that, Chair, thank you very much. This was very helpful. Otherwise, all the other comments, we are taking them. We're going to consider those. And as I have said, Honorable Mjatu, you can give me that paper of your questions so that we can be able to ensure we don't miss any of the issues that you've raised. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Minister, and the DG and the DDG and your team from NIPMO. We are grateful for those responses. We're going to note, Minister, that responses must come back to us. I think we must start putting timelines for the department, that because we still have other responses that have not arrived, and we have raised that with the DG, with the acting DG. And we had an agreement that those responses will be brought back to the portfolio committee as and when they are made available. I will also agree with you, Minister, that we want you to go and check, because I think in our oversight visit to Pretoria, Honorable Mazoni really raised issues of IPs and stolen IPs very passionately. And we've agreed with the portfolio committee that we are going to look into the matter with the department. I think it must not be a question to us if you must go and look and do assessment on and have a proper report on all the IPs that have been stolen during state capture. I think it's a matter of urgency, Minister, that it must be done. It must be done and brought back to the portfolio committee so that we are satisfied with the work that you are doing from your side, and also are satisfied with our, because it sometimes becomes suspicions when it's not there. There's no work, that there's no report that shows that these are the number of IPs that have been stolen, and this is how we are going to initiate a process of involving the law in tracking down all those that have stolen, and maybe also to get back those IPs that were stolen. I was a bit tempted to come in, Minister, on your question of saying that is it enough that we have NIPMO? Is NIPMO enough for? Is it? Are we supposed to only have NIPMO for the work that they are doing? So my suggestion, Minister, will be that we either, from your side, you either beef it up and make it a bigger institution, or if you think that there must be an establishment of other bodies like NIPMO that will assist to track down IPs and also to do the work that NIPMO is doing. I think that institution must be established as soon as possible so that NIPMO get support from another institution that is like theirs to do the work that they are doing. If the body is small and it can't be assisted enough, it can't assist the country enough to do its work, then it must be supported, or either supported to grow, or another body be established to work with them in collaboration with them, so that we are satisfied with the work that is being done in as much as IP is concerned. I think before I close, there must be a deadline of all these reports that are going to be brought back, the answers that are going to be brought back, because I think through our secretariat, we will take those questions that were sent. We'll send them to the department. I had a minister requesting that Honorable Mjatu's questions can. You need assistance with them, so we will get the secretariat to send them to you. But we humbly request that these responses, as much as we sit portfolio committee meetings, at least maybe before we start with the next portfolio committee meeting, we be furnished with responses from previous portfolio committee meetings, so that there's progress, because we might be stuck on questions that, and we might even be asking more questions. I remember there was a time where the department came and then you gave us a brief on indigenous knowledge, on the work that you are doing on indigenous knowledge and all that. But if we're not getting responses, we might end up asking same questions again and again and again, and we might ask them in different forms. And when you sit down and you are to respond, you realize that these are the same questions that have been asked by the portfolio committee, because we are not getting back those written responses from your side. So that is my take on the matter, Minister. Thank you so much for your availability. Thank you. We are looking forward to doing a lot of work with you and also getting those responses that we're waiting for. And yeah, the meeting is urgent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair.
Recording stopped.
Thank you.